Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. We begin with a story of resilience and succeeding against all odds, but it took a while before Ronald Hunter was actually able to talk about his story. The name of his book, Angel Finally Found His Wings. Now, Ronald, you were a guest in 2010 on an Oprah Winfrey show entitled 200 Men, right? And that's the first time you shared your story about being forced into child prostitution. And I think it's interesting that you were found by a producer for John Walsh from America's Most Wanted.
Through my spouse, actually. We had a store in Scottsdale, Arizona, and one of the clients came in and was very talking with Scott and telling him what he was doing. And he worked with John Walsh, and then he shared the story with the guy. And the guy said, wait a minute, there's a show that's about to happen. And he told him all about it. And he said, you think Ron would be interested in doing it? Is he okay? And that's how it all connected. Because I started talking about my story. I believe that in talking about it and getting it out, I was gaining power over it, taking control of it. And so that was the beginning process. And when I got to Oprah, I knew then, because I've been told, you need to write your story. Your story needs to be told. And that's when I saw all these men in there who still struggling in victimhood instead of victimized and survivor, and I was saying, I know what life can be like. I'm living my life and all that happened to me, and I'm not letting it control my life or dictate how I live. And I saw too many people suffering. So
yeah,
I knew then. And I came home, and that's when I told my spouse, Scott, I'm ready to start writing. But then again, it took me 13 years to get it done because of revisiting places that were really tough.
I mean, so Angel Finally Found His Wings is about you on the streets as a teenager, 12 years old, sharing a room at a YMCA with a 34-year-old guy named Charlie who was pimping you out. Now, you're 12 years old in the YMCA and your mom was a schizophrenic. So is that how you wound up at the YMCA, because she wasn't capable of really keeping track of where you were and what you were doing?
What happened was, when he befriended me when we came home from the orphanage, and he knew my story, as they do, they pray,
Wait, you were in an orphanage?
I was in an orphanage, yeah. That's where I came home from, to where my mom was given authorization to have her children back, and the institution. And so when I came back is when I ran into the company of Charlie, who was the neighborhood. Well, he was a Boy Scout leader, assistant scoutmaster, and then he was also a coach for the basketball team for the CYA, Catholic Athletic, and then the PAL, the Police Athletic League. So he had all this reputation of looking out for the kids on the street, organizing them, keeping them out of gangs, and so he took an affinity to me. And when it was time, and I came finally home, he began to take control of me and worked his way into the family, knew my mother's situation, knew the rules in which we were to be home or could stay home, and then worked all that into basically blackmailing me and threatening me, and then, taking over control of me with my mother, who thought she was letting me, giving me to this person who was going to take care of me and take care of her baby, Ray, That's what it was.
How does a 12-year-old know what to do?
He taught me. I know what you said. He, in my training, as he would say, and it's spoken in there too, about, I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do? And he says, I'll teach you. And then he showed me the things I would be doing, how I would do it, how I would negotiate. He would tell me what to do. We had hand signals for right hand is money, left hand is time. It was a whole process that he taught me. And of course, in his training, he meant he was sexually violating me so that I would know what to do and how much each of those things should be charged for. And he followed me. He shadowed me on the streets to make sure, kind of as my protection, but also making sure I was doing what I needed to do. Sometimes he'd call me over and say, "You're standing there too much. You're not even making eye contact. You need to make eye contact. You need to do this." So yeah, and that's the training process.
How did you finally get out of there?
Well, the way it happened was one of my Johns at the time, who in the book his name is James. That's the name I give him for the book. In his meeting me on the street, realized something was wrong, something was different about this kid. This is what he's told me. He told me then. And he needed to find out what it was because I don't belong there. First of all, I should be in school. Second of all, I'm clean, I'm neat. He's watching me, how I behave and stuff. And then he made contact. And in that process of him becoming a John with me, he worked his way to get me to trust him so much so that I finally, in the end of his working, I told him the truth of it, and he was devastated. And he said, "I want to help. Please let me help." And that's how I was able to get away. He created a situation where he could get close to Charlie, get Charlie to trust him, and then he manipulated um, to have more contact with me. So I was off the street, and he was paying me all the money that Charlie was requiring me to bring him home for my days on the street, so that I didn't have to go on the street. And then he was working a plan to get me away from him completely, which is what happened at 17. I finally was able to fight one last time, and that was the last time I saw him. Well, not the last time. I mean, the last time he had control of me, because he kept trying to come and blackmail us, threaten us, follow me at university when I started going to college, at high school when I was finishing that. He was just
What's amazing to me is that you were going to school and you were playing sports and you had high school friends and you hid all of this.
uh, at least I thought I was heading. That was my job for me, because of the idea of somebody finding out what was happening to me, and it's shame and embarrassment. But I discovered later when I went, I'm in the Boy Scout suit, and I just didn't
Yeah.
get to the station, but I don't talk about that too much because I'm in legal stuff. But my friends who wrote depositions shared what they knew about our relationship, and
Oh,
also in there shared with the scouting, because they were also part of my scouting, that same kind of group, shared they had witnessed things that didn't make sense to them. And one of them told where we saw Charlie stick his hand down my pant and grope me, and
mm,
then said, "Come on, let's go, you need to go take a shower, or let's go for a walk in the woods," because we were on a scouting trip. So I discovered that they had something, knew something was wrong, but they all thought he was my dad. That's how he was passing himself off as. And I never referred to him like, I only called him Pops, because Pops is kind of generic. And I got it from West Side Story, the guy who was in the soda shop when they go in and they call him, "Hey, Pops." And so I thought, oh, that's cool. It's a generic, but it has the same kind of meaning. So I'll
right.
use that. And that's what I did as a kid.
Miraculously, you were able to finish high school and you were able to go to college. And how did Charlie end up in jail?
Well, when I broke away, his whole source of income and credibility and was now shot, because he had nothing. He didn't have me to use to give him access to anything. So now he had to leave. He tried to stay around in the neighborhood, and the guys, when I went over and did my research with stuff and talked to him, they said he tried to stay in the neighborhood, and he had other kids that he was trying to, I guess, get, but eventually he had to leave. Something happened and he had to leave, and he went to Florida. In Florida, he began the process all over again. And I got his file from all the things he did, from his arrests and his incarceration, and he had violated a number of other kids from 12 to 15, 16 years old. Um, and so he was arrested many times for other things as well, but all within that same area. And then he was put in jail. He was finally prosecuted, and when we were doing for life, he had four life sentences for
Oh,
child sexual abuse. How
oh,
many? 14 children total. Yeah, that he was held accountable for. Now, when I found out during our research, my spouse Scott did research to try and find him. I gave him all the information how he could do it. He found him, and so when I saw that, um, it just was devastating because now I thought after this, 30 years later, he's still doing this to kids, and it devastated me. I had information, but I had to pause because I was dealing with the idea of what those kids had to go through. So
Yeah.
those were the kind of stops and starts I had to do, and I still knew I had to do it, but I had to be healthy, mentally strong, physically able to do this, emotionally. And so those are the reasons for the starts and stops. But yeah, he died a year ago, December, in prison.
Mm.
Yeah, and there's a picture of him in the book. He's the only name I use, his full complete name, and there's a mugshot of him in the book with his and have his records and everything.
How's your book being received?
It's being received well for who's getting it, who's getting access to it and reading it. They can't believe it. They're devastated by the whole process and thinking, "But how did you turn out like you are today? This doesn't
Yeah,
make sense." And I
right.
say it was a choice. It was a choice that I had to make, and it's what I wanted in my life. This is who I am today. Is who the kind of person I wanted to be, and he tried to destroy that, and I decided I wasn't going to let him, and I was going to. If I did that, then he'd still have power over me. And so what I did was I fought. A lot of therapy, and I focused on the good people in my life. Even during the hard times, there were so many good people that I used them as my source of the vision I wanted to have because I knew that was possible. I just had to stay there and work, and just hold on to that and not take it, internalize it, and be angry about it, um, and move on. Because as long as I gave him space in my head, he was going to have power over me, and he
Right.
would dictate. So I had to fight and get the tools and learn the method to do that. To win out, and that's what I did. And my husband is one of those people who came into my life and just he showed me I made the right decision to work and be who I am today. And, yeah.
It's incredible, and it makes you wonder, what is it about you? I mean, I just interviewed another guy who was raised by heroin addicts
Mm,
and
mm,
was determined to live his life and to do what he wanted to do. And he became a
yes.
doctor and he was able to overcome. But most of the time, stories like yours don't end well.
Exactly.
So, what is it that you have that other people don't? They can't get past being a victim.
Exactly, and that's what I saw in the audience members at that Oprah show. Too
Mm.
many of them in their 70s and mid 40s who were married and had some of their family with them there, that the wives and spouse talked about how it's affected the relationship that they had as well as the relationship he has with his children.
Yeah.
And I thought this can't happen. We've got to show that this is, and that's why I wanted to tell my story. Yeah, I don't know what I put on there trust, hope, faith, and the power of love. Those were the things that I held on to. I had to not let them be taken from me or to lose focus on what I wanted. And that's what I did. There were times when I was at the brink. I tried to commit suicide 3 times. The first one was the one that liberated me, actually, because it brought the awareness of what was going on in my life with James, and that was the beginning of my new separation from what was happening to getting free of it and starting, a new journey.
So, how are you telling people about the book? Are you sending the
Yes,
book?
I've gotten great reviews on it. I've just won the Big Book, distinguished New York City Big Book thing. I just got that. I won a Reader's Choice Book award, recognition. I'm trying. I'm trying to get it out because it's not about me. It's about the people who are still suffering. My story is just that it exists and it still does to this day. That's my whole reason for it. Yeah.
Send one to Oprah while you're at it.
I did. I got some things on it. I did a couple of book clubs. Did buy them. And I did do some talk and signings for them and discussing, and it was the biggest audience that they ever had come to the my talk. Got great responses. Had people hang out after and share for the first time with me what their story was, and they couldn't believe that I had the courage to stand there and share that, but it empowered them to share for the first time outside of themselves
That's
with me, So that was my goal, is to let people know um, that we have the power. We own this, and we have to take ownership of it in order to strengthen ourselves, but also make the awareness and tell the other people who are silent in their victimization, um, that that's not the way to do it. That just protects the people who do it, and they continue to do it. As is an example for me, what Charlie did. Yes, I was a child, but I still carry the guilt of, why couldn't I stop him then?
right.
Why did he have to have 30 more years of abusive behavior and traumatizing children? Those kids are still damaged, from his stuff. I don't know what their situation is, but that's a part I have to deal with too, and I
Right.
realize that.
Well, it's such a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad that you're okay. What did you end up doing with your life?
I ended up, first of all, when James died, that set my life in a turmoil. And I ended up going into another suicide attempt because he was the only person who knew my true actual story, was a participator in it, And then that sent me for a dive deep down. I went into drugs and alcohol, and then I set myself into a rehab, and I always wanted to be in the military. I joined the military. I'm retired from the military. It was the best thing I did. I got a new start, a new life, got the things that I was missing in my life. And then I retired from them, and I went back to school. I went to Penn State, and then from Penn State, I went back. I taught a little bit at Pekin, Indiana middle school, and then saw that that wasn't going to work for me based on my situation and the environment I was in. Went back and I joined the airlines because I always wanted to be travel and go, around the world, and joined American Airlines. And I retired from them 20 years later. And now I'm just doing me, and I wrote the book, and
Well,
this is where we are.
I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been blessed. Thank you so much.
And
All right.
thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Angela Pappachan considers herself a storyteller, not so much a story writer, until an event in her life inspired Super Zach and the gift of life. So let's start with, who's Zach?
Zach is my first husband, and he passed away. But when he was alive, he always wanted to share his story. He always wanted to write a book. That was his dream. And for many reasons, he never really got to it. Probably the biggest reason is that he probably figured he had more time. But he also, growing up, he had learning disabilities. And so writing was not his strong suit either. So I had told him that I would be his ghostwriter and that he could tell me what to write. I would help him write it. I would help him edit it, all of that kind of thing. And we would tell his story. But unfortunately, he passed before that ever came to light. And probably a few months after he passed, I was sitting at my desk, my teacher desk at school, and it was a quiet during my prep period. And it just kind of hit me like lightning, like this little story about organ donation. And so then I just typed it up really quickly. And that was kind of that.
How long ago did he die?
He passed away in 2018. So, a downside of living with renal issues and the medications and things is that your blood pressure can go up and down. And that can sometimes cause wear and tear on your arteries. So he ended up having a massive brain bleed in an area where they couldn't get to it. So actually, his kidneys, because he had had his first transplant when he was 12. Even though I wrote the book where it's a much younger child, his first kidney transplant when he was 12, and then he had a second transplant 25 years later. His kidneys are actually in really good shape, so they were not a contributing factor to his passing. but unfortunately, having a brain bleed was.
He had renal issues his entire life.
Yes.
Okay. How old was he when he died?
43?
So he was young.
Yeah, very young.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. But your story is about a little boy.
Yes.
Super Zach and the Gift of Life. So how do you take all of this experience and make it into a children's book?
Zach was very passionate. Well, both of us were very passionate about education. And in life, we were both Donate Life ambassadors. We went to training courses and things like that to share how important organ donation is, and encouraging that little pink dot on people's licenses, things like that. And because we were so passionate about education, and his main purpose was that he wanted to share his story. This book it's all basically true, other than I made Super Zach a little younger than 12. The rest of it is all true. It's actually his story. It really is quite literally his story. And he would often joke about how he got all the leftover parts and his sister got all the good parts. So she came first, so she got all the good stuff, and he was born second. He got all the leftovers. So he was born with some health concerns, and those health concerns ended up they determined that he was going to need a new kidney at some point, and so his mom ended up being a living donor, which is when a person donates an organ, and is still able to live through it.
Right.
And that kidney lasted him a good 25 years. And then eventually he needed a second transplant. And he received his second transplant from Christina Chesterman, who she was a nurse in Chico that unfortunately was hit by a drunk driver. But she became for various reasons, a designated donor for him. So she ended up saving his life.
Wow. And this is all in the book, except it's a little kid receiving the organs.
The first time around, yes. But then he grows up, and Super Zach, where before he was sick, he's able to grow up and do things. And he's not allowed to play sports because impact sports are dangerous for transplant patients. But he became a runner and did cross country, and he found basically just different ways that he found his own personal strengths and his own personal success, even through having a kidney transplant. He went to Fresno University. He got to work at the Children's Hospital there, and he volunteered there for multiple years, working with children in their need. And then we got married and we had a daughter. So it's the story of hope, and it's the story of triumph despite all the setbacks.
Angela, was this cathartic for you?
Actually, yes, it was quite cathartic. When he passed away, I don't like the concept of things being taboo.
Okay.
I think that we should communicate and talk about things. And our daughter was 4 when he passed. And so we just would talk very openly about him, and we still continue to today. So being able to get the story down and illustrate it, which I've never done before, that was bonkers for me. I don't consider myself an illustrator by any means, but somehow I figured out how to illustrate the book. That was probably the hardest part, honestly. But doing that and involving my daughter in some of the decisions, that kind of thing, it was good. It was really good. And the fact that, you know, I got remarried a couple years ago, and my now husband is so supportive, and that we very openly talk about Zach, and we very openly talk about this book and everything that this book has to offer others, and our goals of getting it into hospitals and getting it into transplant centers, and just knowing that his story can continue to help people. That's his ultimate legacy. Zach was such a loving and caring and compassionate person in his life, and the fact that this story can go on and help others and bring compassion and bring that love to others. Families who are struggling with the loss of a child, and considering organ donation for a living person, as well as families who are going through the process. There's no resources really out there that are accessible for children. So knowing that his love and his compassion can continue through this story brings a lot of peace for me.
That's beautiful, Angela. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Are you going to keep writing now or what?
Well, my daughter would love to see me still write. She wants Super Zach to become kind of a serial character.
Okay.
But I don't, that next story hasn't struck me
All
yet.
right.
And I don't know that that's my journey necessarily, although I have given her permission that if she wants to continue on with Super Zach, she's a fantastic artist as well. That she can, if she could come up with stories, but we don't have any immediate plans. But she's now 11. She would love to see this character of Super Zach continue. She loves how this character is accessible to others.
All right. Well, stay tuned, everybody. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you.
A former high school English teacher, Richard J. Nichols, has published before, but The Song of Jesse is his first book with Fulton. So why did you switch publishers, Richard?
It sounded better, in the contract, and they offered me a little better deal, not quite so much money, and more influence on more emphasis on the marketing edge of things, and so I decided to try that.
Okay. Where did the inspiration for this book come from?
I've been interested in Scripture, the Bible, and relationship with God, and that sort of thing for a long time, and so I think it was just a natural thing. My first book was a religious allegory, and even though it's fiction, I placed it was built around the war in heaven, a scriptural basis for the war in heaven, God and His angels fighting against the dragon and that sort of thing. But I put it in a modern perspective, and so this was an outgrowth of that. This second novel is also a religious allegory, but it's my idea of the life of Christ as a young man, and with his family, his earthly family, because he had, according to Scripture, he had brothers and sisters, and so I just built upon that idea and wrote another religious allegory.
You said it in present day, right?
Yeah, it's in modern times, and of course I don't call him Jesus Christ, but his name is Jesse in the story, and he's with his mother, and his stepfather, and he helps his dad in his contracting business, which he's a carpenter, and I placed an individual from Scripture in context with him, and that person pulled out of Scripture as Mary Magdalene, and he didn't know her in Scripture until much later when he was actually on his earthly mission. But I've got them placed side by side, and there's quite a bit of drama between the two of them, and also between his brothers and sisters. The idea of him being not having the same father as the rest of them, that sort of thing. Just build around that story. And as he helps his stepfather, there's another individual who's the parents of Mary Magdalene. She's not called Mary Magdalene. She's called Mary Alice. And they're trying to subvert Jesse's father, because they have construction business of their own, and they want to take over all of the construction industry in that area. So it becomes a drama between those folks, and it's quite complicated, but that's the basis of it.
And in the end, the young man, Jesse, does the right thing.
In the end, the young man, he comes to the top, and he figures out who he is, what he is to become, and in that respect, why he's able to help his dad, his stepfather, and he's also able to reconcile things with Mary Alice or Mary Magdalene, and she is one of his great followers after that.
In your synopsis here, you say that the young man's inner strength takes over, and he resolves to satisfy the demands of both worlds, and it's the world that's pulling at him, and then the world of, his father, and this turmoil between the father and the stepfather. And you say that is another enigma the reader must resolve, find the answer, as did Jesse. What is it that you're asking the reader to do?
Well, it's a personal thing for each of us. I feel like, we need to determine what our relationship with God is, and how we're going to respond to that relationship, whether we're going to give it our full attention, so to speak, and or whether we're just going to discard it and go our merry way,
right,
doing our thing without any emphasis upon the spiritual aspect of things.
Do you belong to a church?
Yes, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ, the Latter-day Saints. We're sometimes called the Mormons.
Are they interested in your book?
We live in a small community, and we know each other. And I taught at the high school here for 25 years before retiring, and they know me very well. Actually, both my wife and I graduated from this local school here.
Oh, wow.
We started dating together when we were sophomores in high school, and that carried over. But so we're well known, and I get pretty good support, from the community.
So you're able to go out and talk about your book?
Oh yes, yeah. For the first one, I had a little get-together book signing, and I gave away some books. I went to the library and set that up here, and they've got a copy of my book there in the library, that first one.
Why don't you do what you did for the first book for the second book?
I did order some copies. I just want to reach as many people as I can, and I want to celebrate the relationship we enjoy with God, and try and promote that idea. I'm just an individual who feels like that's vitally important in a person's life, and that especially in the critical times that we live in, where seems to be more of a godless society than anything else, and people are not interested in God, but they're interested in their own personal gratification and that sort of thing. We need to turn our attentions more towards Heavenly Father and His ideas for how we can live successfully in life.
Well, Richard, you going to keep writing?
Well, I suppose I will, yeah. I have some other manuscripts that I hope in time will be published, and but anyway, they're on the back table. So
right. Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
It's been good talking with you, and appreciate the call.
A sci-fi fantasy in the realm of pulp fiction. That's how Shaun R. Desouza describes his book Intergalactic Nebula Wars: Initial Attack on the Forefathers. Shaun, what do you mean by that?
George Lucas' Star Wars was almost like pulp fiction in a way, because when he came out with number 4 first and something like that, and then later on number 1 and all that, it's kind of like a pulp fiction, but it's not really, in the movie, it's not like a pulp fiction. Pulp fiction goes, from the middle at the beginning at the middle, you know what I'm talking about. I'm the first sci-fi book that'll be geared in a sci-fi fantasy in the realm of pulp fiction. So when you look at the movies, and you got to read the books pretty much. And people, when they go watch the movies later on in my book series, they'll be like, oh, okay. So that's the end at the beginning, and the beginning is at the end. Okay, now I understand it.
So, what's going on here? You've got some very interesting characters. I'll give you that. I like Falouche.
Uh-huh. He's the main bad guy.
Okay, so what's the story?
Well, it's in my head how the book is gonna be tailored, through the series. There's a 10-book series with 20 miniseries afterwards. So the miniseries is after the so-called ending, where the entire series is going. The book one right there that I have out is actually the outline to the other 9 books, but it's it tells about a little bit of a little history of the aliens and so forth in that book. So the book, this initial book, what it calls forefathers, the attack of the forefathers, which the human race is the forefathers to aliens. So pretty much, and this first book is a theoretical book which has facts and fictional theories of different things. So basically, this book talks about 3 savants. One is in biology, the other one's in chemistry, and the other one's in physics. And they later on become clones, because in this book, all the governments want the savants, so they're so intelligent, they want to, they kidnap them, and their parents are put back after, they disappear, and they create clones to do a mishap in the water to make it look like they died and so forth, so they could disappear to like almost an Area 51, where they meet the Praetorians and the Legendaries, who are the good guys. And the Praetorians, they live on invisible universe, and only their eyes can see their universe. And they're like, what do you call in the Bible, watchers?
Okay.
So they're like watchers of the universe when all the universes were born and all that. So basically, the Praetorians, if they ever get caught by Falouche Inquisitorians, that's what Falouche army and comes from, and Moses' army. But if the Praetorians were ever caught, it could be the end of everything, all universe, all existence. But the ideal reason for Falouche conquest of different universes is to find the forefathers, which in this book he accidentally finds them because the transcender, which is, the thing that pulsates his engines through different dimensions, accidentally gets hurled by a meteor that hits his ship, and he ends up in a dimension of Earth, not knowing he's at the forefathers. And the thing about it, the hybrids later on has to find and conquer him before he kills off the forefathers. Because if he kills off the forefathers, he kills off the existence of everything.
All right, and the forefathers are human.
Correct.
So, how long have you been this diehard sci-fi fantasy guy?
Throughout my years of high school, I ended up with a girlfriend in 11th grade, but she died by hit and run, just to let you know. She was the only child, yeah. But she's the one who motivated me into writing. I wrote a 300-page script. Well, I didn't know how to write scripts back then because, I was, a teenager, and they had a co-op program in New York where you work 1 week and go to school 1 week to get, experience working. So I worked at Wild Gotcho Managers, a law firm off of 51st in Manhattan, and I wrote a script, took it to work. Everybody, some people read it at lunchtime. It was 300 pages. And then all of a sudden, when I was coming home, I was sleeping on a train, about to miss my stop. I ran off the train and left my script on the train.
No.
Yeah, that was my first script I ever wrote in my life. And Michelle Saru, the girl that was my girlfriend at the time, she inspired me to write. He said, "Don't worry about it. So what if it sounds stupid? Just write, write." And then later on, that was in the 80s, 80, 85. But now in 2017, I said, let me start writing. I was saying to myself, I need to start writing a sci-fi book because, George Lucas can do it and James Cameron can do it. Why can't I,
Well, George Lucas and James Cameron, they're like the titans of this kind of stuff,
Yeah, they are. And what motivated me was watching Avatar, the first one, and then watching a bunch of Star Wars through history. And then Pulp Fiction gave me the idea to be like the first sci-fi to ever be like Pulp Fiction, where it's a little bit hard to do that, for anybody. But if you can figure it out, then it'll be the first one of its kind. And the reason I have this book is because when you look at the ending of each book, the readers throughout generation will depict what ending is the best ending for them. Because each ending, having dimensional wars, doesn't mean that's the real ending. Because in each dimension, each ending could be this or that. And throughout history, the reader could say, well, book 3 was the ending or book 6 was the ending. And they can have a debate for generations to come to depict what ending they like.
You don't think that's asking too much?
No, it would be, for the reader, it'll be a mind-boggling thing for them for centuries to come. And they'll have something to talk about in a book, especially if they like sci-fi, fantasy. They'll say, well, I think it's this way. But here's the thing, with the miniseries, with the 20 books, with the hybrids after the war, whatever, the hybrids after Falush is supposedly killed. We don't know if he's really killed or not, right? Because you have different dimensions, right? So it's almost like Marvel with Thanos. Did Thanos really die in those different things? Because according to Doctor Strange, he had like multiple dimensions with different outcomes. And that's another reason why I created this book, because you don't know what the outcome could be. And in Marvel, did they really kill Thanos? Or is he still alive? Did they kill him from that dimension? Or is he still alive in the other dimensions? So
he's definitely still alive.
Right. No, and Falush is a type of character that he can grow as tiny as an ant and as large as a 18-story building.
Oh my God!
So how do you kill something like that for real? And the hybrids are all different sizes. So
have your friends read your books? Anybody? Have you gotten feedback
from people yet?
Yeah.
No, not really. People will buy the book. I'm trying to get my mentor, Steve Wargo, who's been in the film industry for 30 plus years, to try to get me on either Fox and all that. I know there's a certain, like ABC 15, some of those you can get on free without a publicist. And then I could go with radio ads.
You won't invite a bunch of your friends over and sit and talk about your books and have like a discussion, or even online. There's so many sci-fi fantasy people out there. I would think going into one of those groups, you could share your story, no?
Yeah, I've been in those groups so far, but you got to be careful. There's a lot of scam artists out there that would, try to get your money and don't really do anything. I got a couple of people on Intergalactic Nebula Wars on Facebook that say they can create like 3D characters for like toys, and then they can market it and this and that. I said, give me a website. Give me a number. Well, I don't have a website up yet. Just starting out. It's like, okay, you sound like a scam. Okay.
For sure. Well, at least you're a smart guy. You're not going to fall for that. And plus, you want to get some readers going before you start, merchandising, although that's not a bad idea. Like you buy a book and you get, Felucia, you get a little Felucia dollar, whatever,
Right.
Now, you don't have all 10 books written, do you?
My laptop got stolen at McDonald's, so I have to reread my book again and do the outlines again.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I was taking my laptop to McDonald's and I left it on the ledge, and I had my two little girls. So I said, you know what? When I turn around, I couldn't find my two girls, so I had to look for them. So I didn't care about the material stuff that could always be replaced. But my kids can
Right.
be replaced, you know? So,
So you went to look for them. Somebody stole your laptop, and the outlines for all of your books were in the laptop.
correct.
All right. So where do you leave us at the end of this book? It's kind of hard to say, right?
Well, I leave a cliffhanger at the end of the book where did Falush, kill off, take the initial attack on this or that. I always leave with a question at the end of the book for the readers to buy the second book to find out what's going on with the series. So
All right. Well, according to your summary, it's will the hybrid species from old and new galaxies kill off Falush, turning his siblings against him, or will Falush conquer the forefathers and destroy all galaxies as they worship him? Is that what we're left with at the end of this book?
correct. But the hybrids, I leave off with that question. But will it be in book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10? So they have to keep reading, and the books they jump around just like in Pulp Fiction. So each book goes back and forth in time, past, and present. That's how I do it. Past, you know, past, present, and future.
Okay. Do they all speak the same language, right?
No, there's a you talk.
Did you create a language
Yes, I
too?
did. Yes, I
Who are
did.
you, J.R.R. Tolkien?
Well, George Lucas did it too. He created a couple of languages, and he actually has little books on the side with their languages too on Amazon. So I will have later on a dictionary of their language. You never know. People, masters might start having a language thing. You never know.
You never know. All right, Shaun, thanks so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Cedric Lacy never even thought about writing a book until the spirit literally moved him. And now he's here to talk about Tell It Like It Is, Book One.
Well, I was compelled by it. I'm a Christian and I try to live my life as best I can as a Christian. And I was just compelled by the Spirit of God to write the book. It wasn't nothing that I thought to do on my own. And I just woke up one morning and said, I want to write a book. It was the Spirit of God within me that compelled me to write the book. And that's why I wrote the book.
So you just felt like the words just came to you from somewhere else.
Yep, yep. Yeah, my words just, like I said, it was the Spirit of God that compelled me. Yeah, it came from somewhere else. It wasn't me.
Well, you have characters here. So you have Eve.
hmm Some of it is probably little bits and pieces of things that I might have went through, but for the most part, it's just characters that, I brought up because I know what people go through, and I witnessed, in my life what people go through in the urban environments.
Yeah. So what's the story?
The story is it's a real life story what inner city people go through, and it's like you go through obstacles, you go through ups and downs, but at the end, things pretty much like work out for you when you know try to live your life a different way.
What kind of obstacles?
Drugs, you're faced with drugs, you're faced with all kind of negative things that go on out in the street. Violence, people, robbing, people stealing, and things like that. Like you're dealing with a lot of drugs, people using drugs.
Well, it says in your synopsis that, she
hmm
was growing up, amidst all of these negative things going on around her, but she came from a Christian home.
Yeah, her mother and dad, they were Christian folk, and they instilled those Christian values onto her, and she had strong Christian values.
But
And
somehow she's drawn to this guy Adam.
yeah, it was something about Adam that, she liked, and, she grew fond of him. And, she started, just trying to help him and steer his life on the right path, because she knew he was on the wrong path. So she was trying to, steer him towards God.
How does she meet him?
She met him in school. They were schoolmates. He used to bother her. He used to bother her a lot in class, pick on her, call her bookworm, things like that. So, it was one of those kid things.
Does he become involved in the street life and drugs as he grows
Yeah,
up?
yep. He becomes involved in drugs. He gets strung out on drugs. He starts using drugs, and start robbing and stealing, and he ends up in prison. And yeah, his life just take a bad turn. And Eve, you know, sh- she was always present for the most part, but she was the one that helped him out a lot to get his life back on track.
Does the book talk about how she helps him?
Yeah, whenever they together, she would share the word of God with him, and try to keep him encouraged, letting him know that, you don't have to, do these things, and that God is here to help you. Yep.
Yeah, it says that she has to make a life-changing decision.
Yes, because she's living her life for God, and it was, type of situation where she got involved with Adam, and she was being pulled from two different ends. She was being pulled by trying to do the right thing, live her life right for God, but at the same time, she got these feelings for Adam, and she's drawn to him. So it's like, you're being pulled from both two different directions, and you got to make a decision. And that's what it was. That's what it was for her.
So we find out at the end of the book which way she decides to go.
Yeah, you find out at the end of the book which way she decides to go. Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of wrap it up in one book.
Yeah, it's kind of wrapped up in one book, but, it can be two. And, I think that it should be.
Okay. Did you have a good experience writing this book?
Yeah, because, I got involved with the characters. I brought them to life in my mind. And, you know, the whole story, it was encouraging for me at the same time, because, you know, sharing all these different things that people go through in life, and you talking about it and extensively, it has an impact on you. It's encouraging to you.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Are you sharing your book, telling people about it?
Yep, I'm sharing my book on Facebook. My wife is sharing it on Facebook, Instagram, and families and friends. I'm reaching out to them. Everybody's buying it. I got a book signing, yeah, that I plan to do in the near future.
Are you going to keep writing?
Yeah, I already started another book.
A follow up to this book or something completely different?
Yeah, it's something different. It's a different story. It's kind of interesting. It's about a character called Simon.
Okay.
He grows up as a young kid, looking out a window. He's desiring everything that he see outside, walking past the window. Girls, little young guys with girls, and he's looking at it and seeing it, and he's desiring these, to have a girlfriend and look nice and dress nice, like the young guys he see. And he eventually gets out, and grow up, and he get these same things. He get nice things, and he has a girlfriend, and his life just take a sudden turn where he get involved, uh, with drugs. And yep, he gets shot in his head, and he have a near death experience with an illness that he get, and he comes back from all that, and he meets up with a daughter he knew that he didn't know that he ever had. And yeah, it's a great story. He gets his life good with God, and You know, he talks to a lot of people about that when he worked in the hospital about God. Everybody likes him. And yeah, I already started working on that book.
All right. Well, maybe we'll talk again.
Okie dokie. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.